Thanks for tuning in to more pro and college football talk on the OFN Today as the NFL playoffs begin on Saturday with Wild Card Weekend, and the College Football National Championship game airs on Monday night. Marc Lawrence of Covers.com and I will preview all the big games and more as the OFN Today for this Wednesday, the 2nd of January, 2019, starts now. This edition of the OFN Today is brought to you by ourlads.com and Covers.com. Covers.com features live score stats and odds and is considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. All right, so as I welcome in Marc Lawrence, the bowls are over. And, Mark, we got one more game left, the national championship game on Monday. I must say, if we would have talked about 5 minutes after the game, after the Rose Bowl yesterday, it wouldn't have been pretty.
5 minutes after the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, it would not have been pretty, considering Ohio State was my pick, and I had good money on Ohio State. I could not have been more angry at the way they just decided, it's 28-3. Let's just cruise the rest of the way and win, and don't worry about the point spread.
Well, obviously the point spread wasn't on his mind at all. But you know,
obviously,
had you played that game yesterday, you would have won with Ohio State because that game got bet down pretty heavily. You know, Ohio State, in fact, went off as a 4-point favorite in the game after being 6.5 almost all week. So, just depending upon when you made your move would depend upon what your mood would be.
Well, actually, it was I do a lot of small wagers because I'm a small kind of financial guy right now in handicapping business. So so because of that, and I like to have a variety of games. I do a lot of parlays. So it was I think the fourth game of a parlay. It was like a $5 wager or something like that to make $300. And so very, very frustrated because I had, we talked about upsets, and that was the thing. I had Oklahoma State on the money line. We talked about that last week. I had Texas on the money line. We talked about that last week. And Florida. I had all three. All three of those games we talked about last week, Mark. I had all three of them. And so far I haven't been able to recoup anything on it yet. So very upset.
My question to you then is, why not Ohio State on the money line?
Well, again, when you bet small,
I understand.
It's impossible. And plus, look, obviously you can't be a fortune teller unless you're in the business like you are and you're constantly looking at the lines, like you said, and waiting for the line to see if it goes up or down on game day and so forth. And I guess the money line probably, went off about minus 200 by the game or minus 180?
Probably more like about 240, right?
240, okay.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I tell you the truth, I probably wouldn't do that if I had a lot of money anyway. I don't like doing money lines wagering that much on the favorite.
No, but when you're melding with dogs, like straight-up money line dogs like Oklahoma State, Florida, it can balance out or tip the scales, per se.
Yeah, I totally understand. I agree with that, and I do that. Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, instead of making 300, maybe I would have made 200. But hey, nothing wrong with that.
Right,
so
exactly.
You're absolutely right. Taking the money line when you put those big dogs on there is definitely something that I've done before. Just didn't have it in that circumstance. And the other thing you could do, of course, is just if you've got, say, 300 on a 4 or 5 team parlay sitting there at 7. Like I had it, then all you do is you flip over, you hedge your bet, you put 150 on the on Washington, and you're happy with 150 on a $5 bet.
Well, the most amazing stat that I put out, I tweeted this out this morning, and it was after the Ohio State-Washington game was finished, and giving Washington credit for a point spread win in the game, although, like I said, we say they could have gotten the loss on game day. But if you give them a point spread win in the game, that means the Pac-10 over the last 3 years in bowl games is now 7-15 straight up and 3-19 against the spread.
Yeah, see, that's
with only one win by more than 3 points, by the way.
Nice, and I just happened to get one of the wins, so work against me. So that's and of course I almost had that 2-pointer at the end, and then the guy trips over the dude at midfield like an idiot. Or he could have scored. At least I would have got my 150 if he would have just went all the way and scored the 2-point conversion. Hey, we talked about look. I talked about Haskins. I'll continue to talk about it. I'm sorry, but the only quarterback I would have taken over Haskins in last year's draft is Lamar Jackson. Haskins, I think, would have probably been, I don't know, probably picked in the 20s, probably of the draft last year. He'll be a top 10, top 5 pick this year, but I wouldn't take him. Sorry, not me.
I think he'll be a top 10 or top 5 draft bust, is what I think.
We both agree.
He misses too many wide receivers. He's not mobile. I just don't think he brings a lot to the table of an NFL football team, maybe a college football team. But I think he's going to be a reach in the National Football League.
Yeah, he does have that bust look of him, no question about it. It'd probably be better off he stayed another year, but why would you stay when you could be the top quarterback in the draft? All right, so by the way, big win but again, I must say, big win for those Dogs. And was Oklahoma State, that was the one that you picked, right, out of the list I gave you?
Correct, yes.
So that was a good win.
Yes, it was.
And Florida was they were all good wins, even Texas. And look, what happened again to the SEC championship loser? They didn't care. Because, come on, nobody could tell me that Georgia cared about that game last night.
There was no way in the world Georgia would be playing at anything close to the intensity level that they played against Alabama in that game. Win, lose, or draw after Alabama, they would not have played to that intensity level. So they were sort of beat before the game began.
All right, championship game is on Monday night, and Alabama, I think, is now, 5.5 point favorite. Got to tell you, not sure why the line's dropping. I'll be honest with you. I still look, the Clemson Notre Dame game. You don't. I mean, let's just put it out there. If Love doesn't get hurt and Notre Dame gets all the calls, we got ourselves a 4-quarter football game. But Clemson got all the calls. And Love goes down. As soon as he goes down, boom, boom, touchdown. No, boom, 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 touchdown, game over. So come on. I mean, that just tells me exactly what I thought we were going to see, which is I don't think now Clemson's got to go up against Alabama. I'm sorry. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing Lawrence delivering. Maybe next year he'll get him. Not this year. I'm just not seeing it. I think Alabama's too good. I hope that line keeps dropping.
Well, let me say this. I certainly hope there isn't a next year because that would be 5 years in a row. We'd have Clemson and Alabama, and all that would tell me is it's time for a change in the college football playoff format.
Yes.
We can't be watching the same two teams 5 years in a row and expect to be all in on the game. The NCAA tournament committee needs to do something to revamp this format, and if there's no other evidence, it's this. It's the fact that we're watching Clemson and Alabama again. Ho-hum, yum. Okay, let the game begin.
I mean, it could at least have been. It would be a lot better, at least, if it was some sort of a, like a major. If maybe it was Alabama against I don't know, USC or Michigan, Ohio State. You know what I'm saying? Like Clemson's nice story, and you love what Dabo Swinney's doing, but it's not getting it. Clemson is not an historic program, so it is it's boring. I mean, it's I don't know if it's as worse as the NBA yet. Of course, I don't know. We're gonna get Cleveland and Golden State again. That's not gonna happen. Thank goodness that LeBron left. But it could have. I mean, if LeBron would have stayed at Cleveland, maybe we would have got. How many years ago? How many years in a row was that?
Well, I think it was at least 3.
Yeah, and, 3 or 4. Yeah,
and we would have seen it again had James stayed. So,
uh-huh.
But the bottom line here is that Clemson is playing at an elite level these days.
Yeah.
And it's all because of Dabo Swinney and what he's done.
Yep.
And he's been terrific in his career in games in battles of undefeated teams, his and the other. He's been in 20 of them. He's won 16 of those games head to head.
Well, look, they're basically what they are. Alabama and Clemson is they're so good and so much better than everybody else that they don't have to play their best football to beat teams, and that's what we're seeing. So now that they face each other, they are going to have to play their best football. Did you get anything at all out? Which team impressed you more last week?
I personally feel Clemson impressed me most because they held Notre Dame to 248 yards, their season low. The game before that, they held Pittsburgh to 200 yards, their season low. This Clemson defense is really hitting on all cylinders right now. And in fact, 9 of their opponents have been held to season low or second low yards this year. On the other side, the Alabama defense was gashed for 471 yards. At the game before, they were beat up for 454 yards. That's the 2 worst defensive efforts by Alabama this season. I just don't think that defensively, I think the edge is clearly to Clemson in this football game. I think they're defensively superior in this contest. So the question becomes whether or not, as you said, Trevor Lawrence can match with Tua Tagovailoa in the football game.
All right, and then in the NFL, the playoffs begin on Saturday. I'm looking at these playoff games and the way that everything is structured, and I don't like to do it, but I think this probably is a good year to do it. I'm really going to go with some long shots in the playoffs. I don't see a whole lot of differences because the teams that are the lower seeds are coming in hot. The teams that are the higher seeds have kind of flatlined over the last month. I think it's a perfect storm for the hot teams to do something, and that's why we love the NFL. We just talked about no parity in the NBA, no parity in the college football championship situation. That's not the case in the NFL. Now, yeah, do we kind of know it? We were sick of New England all the time. Yeah, but here's the whole reason I bring this up now is because I just don't see that happening now. So I think it opens up the AFC. I can't see New England going back to the Super Bowl. So now you've opened up the AFC. And I just think that even though I do believe New Orleans is and should be the favorite in the NFC, they have not. They kind of peaked. They looked like they peaked a month ago before the Dallas game. They're not playing the same way. They're vulnerable. And here you got this Eagle team. And I know they're a banged-up team. I completely get the injuries that they're dealing with. But if you look at it, their defensive line is playing fantastic. Bennett, Graham, Cox, Long even is contributing. I mean, you're talking about Cox, Graham, and Bennett. I mean, Bennett I know is a little old, but even Bennett and Long, older guys are playing really good football. Graham's kind of up there in age too, but he's a disruptor. Cox is one of the best defensive linemen in all the NFL. And then you throw in the fact that they're getting some decent play from some guys they weren't expecting after all the injuries in the secondary. The rookie Avonte Maddox has played well. Rasul Douglas is playing better. The receivers are starting to pick up. Jeffrey and Aguilar, ever since Nick Foles started getting hot. The offensive line, as long as Jason Peters is on the field. I know he's not the old Jason Peters. He's like 86. But as long as he's on the field, he's better than Vaitai, whatever his last name is. So I just like this hot Eagle team the way they're playing right now, and I think they're going to give the Bears a run for their money. Not sure they win the game, but I think it could be a real close football game. So I think it's going to be a fun playoffs. I could see a lot of crazy stuff happening.
Well, if you don't like, and I agree with you, if you don't like what's happening in the AFC, I'll throw this at you. If you feel Kansas City is vulnerable, and they are with their defense and the fact that they haven't won a home playoff game since 1996.
I do.
New England long in the tooth.
Yes.
Not anywhere closely resembling the New England teams in the past.
Yes.
Okay. Then I will say this to you.
Okay.
The last 2 Super Bowl winners, Philadelphia and the New England Patriots, had one thing in common. Do you know what that one thing in common they had was?
What was it?
They were the only teams in the league that ranked in the top 10 offensively and defensively.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, this year going into the playoffs, there are 2 teams that rank in the top 10 offensively and defensively.
And who are they? I've got my pen ready.
There you go. All right. Mark this down.
Okay.
Those 2 teams happen to be the Indianapolis Colts, who are 25-1.
Okay.
And the Baltimore Ravens, who are 14-1.
Like it.
Now, if you want to go a third leg deep on this, the LA Chargers rank 11th offensively, and they could move into the top 10 in both categories after this week's game. So if you wanted to protect yourself and say the winner of the Ravens-Chargers game, along with the Colts, would be 2 nice long shots to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. If they get there, you can hedge your play and put some money in the bank.
I like it. Matter of fact, I think the way to go is, you got Baltimore 14-1, Chargers, Eagles 16-1, Colts 25-1. Those 4 right there, like you just said, that's what I'm looking at. I'm also looking at. I don't know if Seattle can win a Super Bowl, but I would consider them for the NFC. I think what I like about Seattle too is that First, you got Russell Wilson. How do you not like that? And this is a playoffs where we're seeing rookie head coaches, first-time quarterbacks, but you got Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. That goes a long way. You've got the number 1 ranked rushing offense in the NFL. That helps because we all know how important that can be when nobody's used to it, which they aren't in the NFL anymore. And they have the NFL's best turnover margin because they actually they actually have 41 sacks. That puts the pressure on the opposition. They get the turnovers. So you get a team that can get turnovers. You can run the football. You can control the clock. Russell Wilson may not be putting up these tremendous passing yard numbers, but he has been more efficient than he has ever been in his career. He's putting up big touchdown numbers. His efficiency has been fantastic. That's because of the running game being so good. They're another dog that I think has a chance to possibly surprise in the NFC. Like I said, I'm not sure they can go all the way. Maybe the championship game could even be their limit. But I think they could be a surprise, too. So I might even throw them in there as well. Maybe the only 2 teams I wouldn't have the long shots would be the 2 teams from Texas. I just think the Houston's got there's still some issues with Houston. I mean, it's Hopkins and it's Watson, and that's it. I mean, the defense is good, but it's Watt and it's Clowney, and that's it. I think there's just too many other holes on the team. They got some handful of superstars and a bunch of other question marks. And the Cowboys, I mean, let's be serious. So, Super Bowl teams, I would go with Baltimore Chargers, Eagles, Colts, and maybe I'll just add in Seattle for the hell of it.
I wouldn't disagree with Seattle at all either. Just for what it's worth, Russell Wilson has more touchdown passes this year than in his career, any time in his career. They're running the ball for 160 yards a game, 173 yards a game since Game 3 of the season here. That goes a long, long way toward success in the National Football League playoffs when you can control the line of scrimmage and run the football, stop the run. They would be my long shot choice out of the NFC would be the Seattle Seahawks.
All right, let's quickly take a look at these games. And on Saturday, Colts, Houston, round 3 between the 2 AFC South teams. The road team won the first 2. I think that's going to stay the same. I like the Colts in this one. They're getting whatever, a point or 2 points. Once again, I just think Houston's wide receiver injury situation is just too much at this point. Everything is on Hopkins. Yes, I know the running game has been better this season. But overall, the Colts are playing just so well. They've won 9 out of 10. Andrew Luck has got the history. You've got Reich, fresh off the Super Bowl as an assistant last year. I know Luck doesn't have a great history in the postseason, but this is a completely different football team. This is the best football team he's had, and they're just on a great roll. I don't think this is going to be an easy game by any stretch. Both games this year were decided by 3 points. I'm not going to say it won't change. I think it'll be a close game, but when it comes down to a close game, I'm going to give the edge to Andrew Luck over Watson.
Well, Andrew Luck also he shares a common denominator with Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers, and it's that he dominates division opponents. Does Andrew Luck in his career? He's 24-7 straight up against AFC South opponents, 19-8-4 to the spread, and he's never lost to a division opponent when that opponent's off a win. He's been there 9 times. He's won all 9 games straight up. You're looking at the Houston Texans, who I think are wobbly. If you look at them statistically, they've been out-yarded 4 of the last 5 football games. You mentioned that offensive line from Houston. It's the reason that Watson has been sacked 62 times this year, more than any quarterback in the league. And you've got Bill O'Brien for Houston, a head coach here, who has struggled in his career against the Colts. He's at home, he's hosted them 5 times. He's only won 1 game straight up and never covered the spread.
Wow.
So I think I'm with you. I like the Colts' chances to win this game, advance, and to make that long shot Super Bowl ticket stay alive.
Yeah, here's another thing, too, before I get to the next games. I think everybody needs to now keep the Eagles. What I think they should have done last year is opened everybody's minds to the possibilities of what kind of a team can win the Super Bowl. And what I mean by that is that I don't think you need to necessarily have Tom Brady and Bill Belichick or Peyton and Breeze. I don't think you have to have that anymore. I just think it's a different game, and I think the Eagles proved it. I mean, Peterson's been a coach for a couple of years. Foles was the freaking Super Bowl quarterback. So if that can happen, I think it opens up so many possibilities to all these long shots that we talked about, too. So I want to throw that in there. And that includes, of course, Andrew Luck. Seattle and Dallas is also on Saturday night. And I got to tell you, look, as much as I like Seattle, I'm not going to try to blow smoke at the possibilities of this being easy. The fact is, this is going to be, I think, a tough football game. I mean, the Cowboys, their confidence level is very high, higher than I've seen it in years. They've beaten some good teams this season. They beat the Saints. That was a big one. So confidence-wise, that's going to be big. But again, and look, they've won 7 out of 8. Seattle's won 6 out of 7. But again, the thing is, for me, when it comes down to it, the crux of it, when I say to myself in a close game and I'm going back and forth, I'm deciding which team to take, I say to myself, well, okay, if this team wins, how do I feel afterwards? If this team wins, how do I feel? And that's why I go with Seattle, because if Seattle wins this football game and I take Dallas, I'm going to go, I didn't take Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll over Jason Garrett and Dak Prescott. Am I an idiot? So I just, but besides the other things that we talked about with Seattle, which I do favor them, but they've got the experience, and I'm just going to go with them. But I'm not like ultra confident. Again, that's the whole point. I think the Cowboys are legitimately a playoff team this year, and they deserve to be there.
I agree. I mean, the Wilson and Carroll combination is really, really, I think, the huge edge in the football game. And if we talked about Seattle's running game and the fact that they're averaging 173 rushing yards since Game 3 of the season here, only one time have they been held to less than 113 rushing yards in a game. And the reason I'm drawing that parallel is this. If you take a look at Jason Garrett in his career as a favorite, in games in which the Cowboys have allowed 113 or more rushing yards a game, he is 3-20-1 against the spread. So if you give Seattle their 113 rushing yards, you're going to like their chances with their ticket as the dog in the football game, which is where I'll be.
Okay, and by the way, Seattle also could have an entirely healthy offensive line as long as J.R. Sweezy makes it back. That's also very important to get Fluker back. All right, finally on Sunday's games, L.A. and Baltimore. This one, I also kind of, I mean, initially, I must say this. Initially, my first thing was, you got to be kidding me. I mean, after what we saw a couple of weeks ago, this is just, the matchup is awful for L.A. This is an easy pick for me. Then I started thinking about it because I've liked the Chargers since the beginning of the season because the Chargers are my Super Bowl pick. So I'm like, all right, well, let me think. And all right, well, they were coming off a Chief game, and they were just getting Gordon back, and Allen wasn't completely healthy. So I'm trying to make excuses for them. And okay, it is a Lamar Jackson playoff game. He's never played in it. The Ravens are the favorite here. They're expected almost to win. I know it's a short number, but they're expected to win. So I was kind of hedging a little bit, but then when it came back down to it, I just went back to my original thought, which I think a lot of times you should, which is I just think this is a terrible matchup for the Chargers. The Ravens destroyed their offensive line in that game. That is not changing. This is the same defense. This is the same offensive line. And I think this is going to be I think if the Chargers win this game, boy, is Phillip Rivers going to have to play one of his greatest playoff games. And Lamar Jackson's going to have to play probably his worst game yet. He's going to be, the moment will have to be too big for him. Otherwise, if these two teams just keep playing the way they're playing, I just think this is a bad matchup for the Chargers.
Well, you talked about Phillip Rivers playing one of his better playoff games. He's been an underdog 6 times in the playoffs. He's won the money 5 of those 6 football games. Under Anthony Lynn, the Chargers have been terrific away from home. They played 16 games away from home. They're 11-5 straight up in those games, only 4-point spread losses.
6 straight wins.
Yes, and you're talking about Lamar Jackson, who has really, really obviously put Baltimore on the map. But an interesting little study that I did, and I mentioned this in this week's Playbook newsletter, is that when he was the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback at Louisville, and he put up those monster numbers, he played in 3 bowl games. And in those 3 bowl games, he lost 2 of the 3 games straight up into the spread. Louisville averaged just 21 points a game. That was 17 points a game less than their season average.
Yes.
And I can equate those bowl games to being a playoff game in the National Football League.
Sure.
So we'll see whether or not Jackson can step up here. I'm going to back. I like the Colts side of this football game here. I think it's a step-up game for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, that's the thing that I talked about actually last year coming into the draft, and it's the reason why I keep saying it's great what they're doing, and I don't think that he's going to get. I can't see the difference for me is that I don't think he has to worry about throwing the football as much, and that's been an advantage. I think this is going to hurt him next year, when everybody has time to look at film and figure out how to stop the running nonsense that's going on, because this ain't going to last. I mean, it's a gimmick situation, and it's not going to last. It never does. So he's going to have to eventually start throwing the football more. But I do agree. That was one of the rips I had on him, was that he just never came up in big games. I did not think he should have won the Heisman. To me, Heisman Trophy winners should win big games. Give me the big moment to win the Heisman. He gave you no big moments in big games. All of his yardage numbers came up against crappy teams. I just didn't think that deserved to be the Heisman winner. He's done a fantastic thing, and I think that running ability in the 1 week prep time that the Chargers have. Yes, they got film on him from an extra week. That should help. Unlike other teams that didn't have that extra week. Because they didn't play Lamar Jackson yet. But and here's the other thing. Baltimore, even though they won 4 straight at home, they're just 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 at home. So it's 2.5. Who knows? Maybe the Ravens win and don't cover. You never know. All right.
Well, at 2.5 is also a key critical number in the National Football League playoffs, because NFL favorites of 2.5 or less points are 15 and 35 against the spread.
Ooh, okay, interesting. Against it, really? Okay, interesting.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
All right. See, no question. That is to see the Chargers. If they weren't playing Baltimore, I would be real confident about their ability to go far. This is just, to me, this is their toughest game. I think if they get past Baltimore, I think they're definitely a Super Bowl team. Not so I'm saying they're winning it, but that's why the 16-1 number is a good one, because I would feel real good just if they get past Baltimore. So, all right, and then the last one is going to be Philly and Chicago, and this is a 6-point spread, 2-1 on the money line. And here we go again with the Eagles in the playoffs as dogs. We know what happened last year. They won the Super Bowl. They're 5-1 in their last 6 this year. They're only lost in that span in OT to Dallas. They're 3-0 straight up ATS with Foles. And as I mentioned, I think I think that, yes, they've had the injuries, but there's a lot of players playing really good football right now for the Eagles other than Foles. So I think this is not – Chicago was probably better off losing to Minnesota to play Minnesota in the playoffs and having to take on the Eagles. This is a tough matchup for the Bears. You respect the Bears. The defense has been fantastic. They've been 9-1 straight up ATS last 10. The only loss for them in that span was the OT loss at the Giants with Chase Daniel. But let's keep in mind, head coach QB, first-time playoff game. You do have to deal with that. I am concerned about Trubisky. I think if the Bears win this game, just like most of what we've seen in the regular season, it's the defense. The defense is going to put an end to the whole Nick Foles thing. But if Nick Foles continues to play pretty well, I'm not saying he's going to light them up, because he's not lighting up the Bears. But if he doesn't make big mistakes, like the Houston game, they don't turn the ball over, I think Philadelphia is going to win this football game. And this is a very, very picky kind of game. And therefore, when I get these picky games, why not go for the 2-1 money line?
Well, I don't blame you for going for a money line with the Eagles, because they've been there, done that before, and this is a step-up game for the Bears who haven't been there or done that. A huge quarterback edge to Nick Foles in the contest. You can almost arguably say the same thing for Peterson, although Nagy is developing as we're speaking. You can shoot holes at the Philadelphia defense. It's the worst in the NFC. They're being outgained, the Eagles, 63 yards a game on the road this season. But they're also healthy for the first time all season long. They're going to have almost 100% of their starters in place for this game, which we haven't seen all year. So that's going to be a big, big difference. On the other side, the Chicago Bears, this defense, which we know all about, has led them to allowing the fewest points per game in the league. They're outgaining opponents 51 yards a game the second half of the football season here. Statistically, I think there's a lot to say for the Chicago Bears, which is the reason they're favored. That and the fact that 9-1 straight up in ATS the last 10 games would warrant that. This is a game to me that's very, very difficult because I can make cases for both sides of the game.
Yes,
and I wouldn't be surprised if either team wins and covers this game. It's
sure. Yeah.
It's a game that when you can do things like that, you're better off just grabbing the remote, sit back, and watching the football game, which is what I'm going to do.
Or do like I'm going to do and take the money line.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
All right, Mark. Appreciate it. Great job. Enjoy the playoff weekend to kick things off. And, of course, also the national championship game on Monday. And we'll, of course, besides covers.com, we'll check you out at playbook.com.
That sounds terrific. Okay, I appreciate that. Have a great weekend, Greg.
Thanks,
okay?
Mark. You too. All right, that's Marc Lawrence, covers.com, and he'll be with us again next week as we get into the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, and then on through the rest of the NFL playoffs here for the month of January on the OFN Today. So we also want to remind you about our shows coming up over the next couple of days. So come back again and join us. Dave Koken and Teddy Sevransky will join me for more NFL and college football talk. For Marc Lawrence, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today on the R-Lads Football Radio Network, brought to you by Covers.com. Alpha Mike Foxtrot.